Welcome to the process. My name is Dr. John Bush. This is lesson 77A, 2015 to 20 deep look at positions. We have rocked and rolled the last bunch of lessons. Let's call this the last call as we'll move on to another topic. I kind of wanted to circle back to kind of where we started in looking at patterns of PPR drafts over the years, just again to build a foundation and to let you kind of see how the typical draft pattern goes. That's it. It's only eight slides to go through, so shouldn't be so great here to go through it. But I think it's a good kind of summary back to where we've been and what we need to consider in our pattern, all to help you win your fantasy football drafts. Here we go. So I've had this figure before. This is ADP sector in sixes. Okay, so every two represent a round. And we have quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, wide receivers. And over 2015 to 20, I guess 6 years, I've just counted the number of each position in each segment. And you can see right away that running backs dominate the first 12. Wide receivers have about half that or so, a little bit more than half. One tight end has found their way into the top 12. And we're seeing that now with Kelsey. And you look and see that 13th to 18th wide receivers. And then the next wave is RB and WRs. Then we go wide receivers again, a little bit close to equal. Then back to wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, and so forth. So you can watch the patterns by numbers there and kind of see where things start happening. I have this chart. To me, it's colorful. I do like the colors. Yellow is quarterback, blue is tight end, red is running back, and green is wide receivers. So you can kind of follow here. And I've got in 4 segments here, and I've got a pink line there, so you can kind of see within segments and kind of what's going on. And at the top, I rate the dominant position. So on a typical PPR draft like 6 years, it's been running back, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, running back, 3 wide receivers, running back, 2 wide receivers, tight end, and quarterback. So what we take from that is that most people are not going to get serious about tight ends and quarterbacks until after the, what was it, 6th round, so 7th round. 7th round and 8th round, look at the quarterbacks. They start dominating here. So people really start getting going there. So people are hoarding RBs, wide receivers, and hoarding those, maybe a 3-3 kind of thing or a 2-4. And then they grab their tight end and quarterback. I know that, you know, tight ends have come before, and you can kind of collect and see the tight ends, for instance, in blue. And then all of a sudden we peak right here, and we peak again in the 33rd pick here. So you can expect this. So if you want to do opposite drafting, and you would take a wide receiver, a couple running backs here, a wide receiver, so another running back, a wide receiver, some more running backs, and probably take a quarterback first, then a tight end, and so forth. So you could kind of plan an opposite draft. People talking about 0 RB, 0 wide receivers, early, late tight end quarterbacks. And I've seen them all and tried most of them. I've talked about my patterns in this series and things that I've been successful with. But I just thought you should understand and see what the flow is. It seems to me that people kind of zig and zag on wide receivers until the 6th round. Then they start adding, then it gets a little bit more chaotic with tight ends and QBs in there. So there's going to be a steady stream of running backs and wide receivers for the first 6 rounds. Then it gets chaotic. So, for instance, if you wanted some quarterbacks, it would be best to do that before the peak. Okay, if you wanted a tight end, probably best before the peak. So just kind of see where people are at and think about what they're doing. And here's the counts of each position. This is the trend lines here. This is for instance, the quarterback peak at about right in here. Okay, so that's about 6th, 7th round up. Tight ends are a little bit, they're going to take them a little bit earlier here, but they're definitely peaking in this range as well, plateauing out here. So again, here's the 6th round kind of thing happening here. So QBs and tight ends. Running backs are in red, and they are bottoming out about the time the others take off. And wide receivers are almost linear, a little bit biased early, but really not a dramatic. They're the least dramatic position across the draft. Okay, they're kind of steady drafting that's going on with wide receivers. So think about that when you're planning things here, how you should approach this. But here's the overall pattern kind of by the trend lines. If you look at ratios, and we've done that, here's the ratios of running backs to wide receivers. Anything above 1, okay, is favoring the RB, right? And then the wide receiver RB ratio, right? Anything above 1 favors the wide receiver. So each one is the opposite, right? So you can see here, there. You see that zigzag. Grab one or two, grab another running back, grab some more wide receivers. The highest ratios of wide receivers show up, check this out, this is kind of interesting, about the 90th pick. There's one last hurrah for running backs here. So that is another skew point. So we see that in the top 12, and then 79 through 90th, we see another peak, and then here's another kind of right there. So we see peak right here. So you need to anticipate those. So if you're thinking, I got a long shot RB, you probably need to be picking right here, right? I got some secret wide receivers. Okay, pick them here. You're trying to beat these peaks. Okay, so that's how I would approach and use this data. Pretty neat how we can kind of predict that. Okay, so you kind of go in with the draft pattern. So I would have maybe even a timeline or something and by, rounds and just say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You can flow with the round or you can try to beat the round. You just need to think about, based on what the patterns are, how you need to proceed. I think it gives you an advantage if you anticipate runs and biases, and you can behave accordingly. Here is kind of a double bar graph here. Red is wide receivers. So if you think about it, you could flip this over and this will be wide receiver, and then it peaks here. So I show the peak here. So of wide receivers back to equal wide receivers, back to running back, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, RB, RB. So there's those peaks that I talked about right there, and there's one right there. Okay, so you can see where the RBs are playing and proceed accordingly. Here's the tight end and QB versus tight end and tight end versus QB. Again, anything above 1 in the column. So tends to be some tight ends here and there, and that really is the dominant show. So a lot of people are grabbing at least one tight end before the 42nd pick. So there's this late. And then if you're going late, it looks like you're stretching out. Quarterbacks, on the other hand, peak at 43rd to 48. So they're getting that early one early. And then some of the late QBs, the late drafters really kick in after the 103 here. And there's kind of a trend right here as well. So think about the skew here and where you want to be with your tight ends. Looks to me like a bunch of people grab the tight end and then the rest that didn't get one slowly accumulate. There's a little bit here and there, but nothing that's just so dramatic like here. So what is it about these tight ends that make people interrupt their RBWR drafting here in a PPR? What is going on? What kind of tight end is that? Well, it's an actively involved tight end. The Kelseys, the Hawkinsons, the Andrews, the Wallers, etc. They're heavily involved. And then these are more touchdown dependent and not so heavily involved, probably past the 4th round there. Okay, so just think about how you would approach this. Here's the tight ends. So no tight ends have ever gone in the first 6. Okay, so, one has come up in the 7th, 12th. I think Kelsey it's going to be the second one in 7 years now that's going to happen to. And we have QB here, QB there, here, okay, here. And it looks like there's a little zigzag going on right here. QB, QB, QB. So tight ends, it's almost all tight ends with an early QB, but pretty much tight ends are ruling here. And after this point, so after the 42nd pick, people are switching to the quarterbacks. And I think by the 6th round, you're going to see big time peaks in QBs here. And a lot of the tight ends may even be going before the 6th round. So you have a good tight end peak here early 6th round. And you have an equal right here at the, 67th through 72nd. So think about how to proceed with this situation. Some people wait, let the draft come to them. Some people have a plan. I say do what your records say has worked before. You're saying, well, I don't have records. Now's the time to get you a draft diary going. Now's the time. So next year you'll have something. Okay? I say it every year. Here we go again. Okay, this is Dr. Bush for the process. We're finishing with this block of material, and we will move on to some next blocks of fun facts and metrics. Come back.